Ibrahim Chouri has ordered 115 brand new buses for Burkina Faso to what could be one of the most transformative moves in African urban transport history. Practically overnight, these sleek vehicles hit the streets, staffed by hundreds of newly recruited drivers and backed by government-controlled fares. This wasn't just a simple upgrade, it was a full-scale takeover of the country's public transport system. The question is, why make such a bold move now? What unfolded in Burkina Faso could mark the start of a transportation revolution. At sunrise, residents in Ouagadougou and other major cities woke to an unfamiliar sight. 115 spotless, state-owned buses lined up and ready for service. These weren't the battered, overcrowded vehicles people had reluctantly grown used to. They were modern, uniform, and stamped with the unmistakable mark of state authority. The launch wasn't gradual or experimental. It hit like a tidal wave, with buses deployed to key transit hubs and main routes on day one for city dwellers. Accustomed to long waits and unpredictable fares, the change was instant. The new service operated on strict timetables with uniformed drivers, and in the capital, even non-passengers noticed the difference. The usual chaos of unregulated minibuses and motorcycle taxis competing for customers had eased, replaced by a more orderly flow. Government officials revealed this fleet was part of President Traoré's wider plan to bring urban transport firmly back under state control. The timing was no accident. Public frustration over chaotic, unsafe, and overpriced transportation had been reaching a boiling point, with social media flooded by videos of commuters crammed into dangerous vehicles, stranded mid-route by breakdowns, or charged inflated prices during peak hours. The buses weren't just an alternative, they were a declaration that the state was reclaiming a sector it had long surrendered to informal operators. Every detail of the rollout showed deliberate strategy. Routes were mapped to connect major neighborhoods, markets, schools, and government offices, with priority given to overcrowded corridors where delays had become routine. In some cases, stops were established in areas completely ignored by private transport before. The public reaction was mixed, but overwhelmingly curious. Older commuters remembered past government transport projects that collapsed due to mismanagement and budget shortfalls. Younger riders, however, saw something different, a modern, well-equipped service that felt professional rather than improvised. Some even compared the buses to those in North African capitals, sparking a small wave of national pride. Behind the scenes, this shift had been months in the making. The government not only procured the buses, but also carefully recruited and trained drivers under strict state supervision. Mechanics were assembled in advance for routine maintenance, ticketing systems were tested before launch, and security measures like onboard surveillance and misconduct reporting protocols were built into the system, a level of oversight rarely seen in Burkina Faso's transport sector. For President Traoré, this was more than just about buses. It was a symbolic statement about the role of the state in delivering essential services, countering the widespread belief that efficiency and reliability could only come from private enterprise. By flooding the streets with reliable, well-branded government buses, the administration wasn't just solving a mobility crisis, it was challenging the very idea of who should run vital public infrastructure. Still, the suddenness of the change raises questions. This wasn't slow reform. It was a sweeping overhaul that disrupted habits, livelihoods, and entrenched power structures. Private operators, who have long dominated the informal transport economy, now face direct competition from a state-backed service with far greater resources. Some have already voiced concerns about losing their livelihoods, but the government's decision to push ahead suggests a deeper, calculated goal, one aimed at restructuring the very foundations of urban mobility. When those 115 buses rolled out, it wasn't just the visible face of Burkina Faso's transport system that changed, its internal machinery was rewritten. For years, urban mobility functioned like an open market, where anyone with a vehicle and a chosen route could operate. The state had little say over how routes were assigned, fares were set, or safety was enforced. The result wasn't a coherent system, but a chaotic mix of isolated operators competing for passengers. President Chouri's team knew that simply introducing new buses without rewriting the rules would fail. The first step was dismantling the fragmented licensing model that allowed dozens of small operators to run overlapping routes without coordination. In its place came a centralized routing authority controlling every route, stop, and timetable, ensuring buses ran in harmony with the city's overall traffic flow. The command structure was also transformed. In the old model, drivers worked for themselves or small private owners. In the new system, they answered directly to a state-managed transport agency empowered to enforce schedules, monitor performance, and remove drivers who fail to meet safety or service standards. Every bus is fitted with a real-time tracking system, allowing the control center to detect delays, rerouting, or unusual behavior instantly. Even the payment system has been overhauled, quietly ushering in a new era for Burkina Faso's urban transport. Instead of relying solely on cash payments, which often left fares vulnerable to overcharging and manipulation, the government has begun piloting a standardized ticketing system. The long-term plan is to integrate digital payment options, including mobile money, already popular nationwide. This shift will allow passengers to pay fixed, regulated fares without depending on the driver's word, reducing disputes and ensuring revenue flows directly into the official system. That means funds can be reinvested into operations instead of disappearing into untraceable pockets. Another major change lies in maintenance responsibility. In the past, vehicle upkeep was left to private owners, many of whom delayed repairs until absolutely necessary, often compromising passenger safety. Now, every bus is part of a state-managed fleet with scheduled servicing at designated facilities. Maintenance crews are trained and employed by the transport agency, ensuring the government controls vehicle condition from the moment a bus begins service until it is retired. This guarantees that buses don't just start in good shape, they stay that way. Beneath these structural reforms is a deeper political shift. By centralizing control, the state isn't just driving the buses, it's steering the entire urban transport economy. This move strips dominance from the informal sector and places mobility decisions firmly in the hands of public planners rather than market forces. It also allows the government to align transport policy with broader urban priorities such as reducing congestion in commercial zones, improving access to public institutions, and synchronizing routes with new infrastructure projects. However, sweeping transformations don't happen in isolation. Every change to the transport system's foundation ripples through the wider economy. Routes once controlled by private operators are now state territory. Informal workers who thrived under the old system face an uncertain future. And with centralized control comes centralized accountability. The government now bears the full weight of public expectations. If the system succeeds, it will prove that state-led transport can be efficient, fair, and modern. If it fails, critics will argue that the old chaotic but flexible model suited Burkina Faso's realities better. This leads to the next question. Beyond structure and control, what will the overhaul mean for livelihoods, job markets, and the city's economic heartbeat? When a government takes over an entire transport system, the first visible change is the vehicles, but the more significant transformation happens behind the scenes in the movement of money, the creation of jobs, and the reshaping of livelihoods. The introduction of 115 government-run buses in Burkina Faso, is far more than an infrastructure project. It's an economic event rippling across the urban landscape. The first major impact has been formal job creation. Hiring hundreds of bus drivers was only the beginning. A functioning state-run fleet also requires ticket collectors, administrative staff, fleet managers, mechanics, depot workers, route planners, safety inspectors, and even marketing teams to communicate schedules and fares. These roles come with contracts, stable salaries, and often benefits like Social Security contributions. For workers who previously relied on unpredictable informal gigs, this marks a new level of economic security beyond direct employment. The rollout is sparking a secondary job market. Suppliers of spare parts, fuel providers, cleaning services, and uniform manufacturers are benefiting from government procurement orders. A reliable transport system ensures steady demand, allowing these businesses to invest confidently in inventory, equipment, and staff. In this way, the buses have triggered a chain reaction, enabling small and medium-sized enterprises tied to the sector to operate with less financial uncertainty. The benefits extend to ordinary citizens as well. Under the old system, commuters often had to take multiple disconnected rides, paying more and waiting longer between transfers. A coordinated bus network reduces travel times, cuts expenses, and frees up household income to spend elsewhere in the economy. There's also a productivity boost. When workers arrive on time, businesses run more efficiently, students who get to class punctually perform better, and hospitals, markets, and government offices operate without service disruptions. This new predictability in urban life can attract investors who value cities with reliable infrastructure. Yet not everyone stands to gain. The informal transport sector, comprising small minibus owners, motorcycle taxi drivers, and independent shuttle operators, has long provided income for thousands. Many will see earnings fall as passengers shift to the government's subsidized, higher capacity buses. Some may transition into the formal system, but others will struggle to compete. This raises a broader question: how can modernization coexist with grassroots livelihoods? Supporters say formal integration offers long-term stability and worker protections, while critics warn of sudden income loss for those without resources to adapt. The government's challenge is to strike a balance. It must embrace the safety and efficiency benefits of the state-run network without leaving displaced workers behind. Solutions could include training programs, incentives for private operators to join the public system, or redeployment into other urban service sectors. If successful, the buses could dramatically reduce commuting costs, improve punctuality, and strengthen employment stability, laying the foundation for a more competitive, investor-friendly urban economy. This would not only justify the initial investment, but also position Burkina Faso as a regional example of how public infrastructure could function as both a social service and an economic engine. But transportation reform is about more than jobs and revenue. It shapes social realities. Public transit determines who can move freely, who feels safe, and who has access to the city's opportunities. That leads to the next key question: how will this new system transform safety standards and expand access for groups that were previously marginalized or underserved? In any city, transport is about more than moving people from point A to point B. It's about shaping participation in urban life. Burkina Faso's new government-run bus system is not just about efficiency and affordability. It's about raising the bar for safety and inclusivity, two areas where the old system fell short. Safety starts with design, and the new fleet reflects that priority. Each bus meets modern safety standards, from reinforced braking systems to fire-resistant interiors. Wide entryways and low steps make boarding easier for elderly passengers, pregnant women, and those with mobility challenges. Inside, clear aisles and designated seating for priority riders reduce the risk of accidents from overcrowding or sudden movements. While these features may be standard elsewhere, in Burkina Faso they represent a major leap forward. Driver conduct is also central to this transformation. Before taking the wheel, every driver completed extensive training that went far beyond route familiarity, covering passenger safety, emergency protocols, and professional conduct. The driver training program went far beyond basic route familiarization. Sessions included emergency response drills, first aid instruction, and techniques for resolving passenger disputes. Defensive driving was a major focus, teaching operators to anticipate hazards from pedestrians, motorcycles, and other vehicles in often congested urban environments. This transformation is not merely technical, it's cultural. By instilling safety-conscious habits at the training stage, the government is working to reshape the mindset of those behind the wheel. One of the most critical, but less visible, Safety measures is centralized oversight. Every bus is now equipped with monitoring systems that transmit real-time data to a control center, tracking speed, braking patterns, and route adherence. If a driver exceeds safety limits or deviates from protocol, dispatchers can step in immediately. For passengers used to loosely regulated transport, this level of surveillance may feel unfamiliar, but it acts as a constant deterrent to reckless driving. Safety improvements extend beyond the buses themselves. In the past, boarding and disembarking often meant stepping into the middle of busy roads or poorly lit areas. Now, many routes feature designated stop zones, some equipped with shelters and lighting, making nighttime travel safer and more comfortable. For early morning and late evening commuters, these enhancements can mean the difference between feeling secure and feeling vulnerable. Inclusion is the other pillar of the reform, and it has been approached with equal intent. Regulated fares ensure affordability, protecting vulnerable groups from being priced out of reliable transport. Route planning has prioritized neighborhoods historically neglected by the old network carriers private operators avoided for lack of profitability. By extending service into these zones, the state is addressing long-standing gaps in access that have reinforced social and economic inequality. For women, especially those traveling alone at night, the buses provide a safer alternative to informal transport, which often lacked accountability and exposed riders to harassment. The combination of uniformed drivers, structured stops, and direct reporting channels to state authorities creates a stronger sense of security. Students also benefit from predictable schedules, reducing the risk of missing classes or being stranded far from home. Even for those who don't immediately become regular passengers, the very existence of a structured, affordable, and reliable transport option changes how people think about mobility. Job seekers may apply for positions farther from home, students may enroll in schools outside their neighborhoods, and families may visit markets or hospitals they previously avoided due to transport concerns. But safety and inclusion are not just operational improvements, they are political statements. A transport system that visibly serves and protects all citizens signals that the state can deliver tangible benefits in a country where public trust in institutions has often been fragile. That visibility matters. It also prompts a larger question. Is this reform a one-off achievement or part of a broader strategy to redefine the role of the state in Burkina Faso's future? In reality, the transformation of the public transport system is part of a much larger narrative. President Ibrahim Traoré's administration is steadily repositioning the state at the center of economic and social life. For years, essential services were left to market forces, often dominated by informal networks or foreign-controlled companies. Now, the government is not just regulating from the sidelines, it is owning, operating, and setting the agenda in sectors that shape daily life. The bus network may be the most visible example, but it is far from the only one. Recent months have seen similar state-led moves in agriculture, industry, and energy, from building state-backed processing facilities to investing in nationalized energy projects. The underlying philosophy is clear. Burkina Faso should not depend on external actors or purely profit-driven enterprises for vital public services. In transport, this philosophy carries symbolic weight. A government-run bus service is more than a mobility solution, it's a demonstration of capability. In a country where people have long been told public systems can't compete with private efficiency, every bus that arrives on time and every passenger who travels safely serves as a quiet rebuttal to that belief. Strategically, this control